They had a very poor ADSL, but again, as a result of RBI1, they can now get VDSL. So we've got some very remote areas with customers getting 30 megabit connection, which is nothing that they could get, again, through the wireless. So I think the work that Chorus have been doing with that funding so far has been effective in increasing the coverage. And while the official figures might not show, hey, there's a bunch of new connections, the experiences that customers are seeing are improving in some areas.
Hello, Ray. I've been looking around here for Anthony Royal or anyone else from NetHui. Do we have? They're next door. Oh, they're next door. Okay. So, so over the past couple of years, I've looked at a number of rural Maori communities on behalf of NetHui and Te Puni Kokiri, and all three of them were missed by the RBI. And all three of them are still in a state where they have no broadband and no cellular coverage. And in two of those three communities, getting cellular coverage was actually more important to the community than getting broadband, because cellular connectivity is something that anybody can afford. If you have a cell phone signal, you can get a prepaid phone and you can use it. People can call you, and it doesn't cost you anything to get a call. Broadband, on the other hand, is pretty expensive, and in these communities, even if they had access to RBI, most people wouldn't be buying it because it's too expensive. So, I'm interested in the black spot funding more than I am in the broadband funding, but I'm also interested in why the TSO has been held up and why the government isn't doing anything to guarantee affordable broadband for everyone. But those three communities were the Whanganui River Valley, Waipiro Bay out on the East Cape, and the northern part of Waiheke Island. And, you know, we came up with some good solutions for them, but nothing has been implemented in Waipiro or Waiheke. Aotea, Great Barrier Island, I should say. In the Whanganui River Valley, they actually came into a partnership with InspireNet to build wireless coverage, and that's gone very, very well for the community.
Well, hi, Ivan Lumex. With my computers and homes hat on, I deal with a lot of remote low-income families in all sorts of valleys and all sorts of spots. In fact, I live just over the hill from Waipiro Bay, which has now got internet, but I'm not quite sure about the cell phone coverage. But the biggest issue is the affordability. RBI1 didn't really at all, and it'll be interesting to see how many people hooked up to the RBI1 in my community can't afford $100 a month to hook up to it. So the investment in RBI1, in my mind, was you know, a waste of time for them. Thank you.
So just clarifying on RBI1, there's a couple of components. Chorus, fixed line, mainly fibre into schools. Vodafone, I think, won the wireless portion of it. That was originally intended to allow wireless operators to co-locate on Vodafone cellular towers, and there doesn't seem to have been a lot of that, or there don't seem to be a lot of consumers taking the Vodafone fixed wireless service. But then, because they were building new cellular towers, Vodafone has extended its mobile network as well. I don't think the extension of the mobile network was actually part of the RBI per se. It's just, you know, it was an incentive for Vodafone to participate.
Rich, I don't invite for this. What is the price? What's the price of the broadband solution? So early days, RBI was to be priced the same as town pricing. That's how Vodafone won the bid. So the government reneged on that. What happened?
So as I understand it, the fixed wireless component is somewhere just over $100. Is that right?
That's higher than town pricing.
Yeah. And presumably the mobile price is the mobile price.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sorry, just a reminder to use the microphones that goes with the stream. Can you hear?
Okay, I was just going to make an observation because we did a project over the summer looking at what is working in rural broadband, and what is working across the country is regional and local wireless ISPs. They have many more sites that are located where the demand is, and their economics are such that they can build where the community needs them. And that's happened in spite of, not because of the RBI. And the simple truth of the co-location economics is 1 year's colo on an RBI tower is the cost of building 5 new wireless sites forever. And there is just this huge mismatch between the solutions that are actually being achieved locally and these schemes. There are people out there getting good rural broadband, but they're not getting it from these schemes.
Thanks. Hi everyone. For those of you who don't know me, Claire Curran, I'm Labor's ICT spokesperson. So I just want to say a few things because we've taken a particular interest in the RBI and have some real concerns. $300 million it's worth. 252 million of those dollars were from an industry level levy and 48 million direct government funding. There's another 150 million about to be expended, which is what is up there, so 50 million for the black spots. And our big concern is that there hasn't been a proper analysis done of RBI 1, or an analysis done. And the figures that I've managed to extract out of the Minister and the Ministry are that 8,500 fixed wireless connections, which is from $60 million of that $300 million, which essentially equates to about $7,000 each connection, and various figures around the upgrading of the towers and the new towers that are being built around the numbers of people that can connect better. But that includes people like me driving into rural New Zealand and being able to, get access through better cellular coverage, which is a good thing. But the actual figures for how many people are actually connected and are actually benefiting from RBI 1 are very hard to determine. And our big concern is around, has it been value for money? And how can it be improved on before this new amount gets spent? So I'm putting that out there because I don't think that work's being done.
Thanks, Claire. Vaughan?
Apologies for before. Vaughan Baker, My Republic. Affordability is key. So the government rolling on that requirement is the reason uptake's so low. Affordability is an interesting one. I mean, people ask me a lot. I sell minimum 100 meg fibre in the UFB cities. We've brought the price down. It's now more competitive, right? So if the government actually honoured those obligations for the rural solution, it would then be more affordable. Then in theory, you'd be testing the uptake. Because yes, that is a barrier. You then get into the conversation around that last bullet point there where is broadband affordable? When I drive through rural New Zealand, I'm amazed at how many Sky dishes I see on the side of buildings. You can now get your entertainment for a lot cheaper and more specific entertainment for what you're interested in over the top. And when you look at what people spend, because we did this analysis back when we looked at UFB, in the envelope in the entertainment space and also in the connectivity space and in broadcasting, people have an envelope of about $150 a month that they'll spend. and you need to be operating in that range. If somebody forgoes their Sky subscription, their broadband is affordable when they look at that package in its entirety.
Hi, Stu Fleming from Wicked Networks in Dunedin. Just to continue on the affordability side of things, it's now cheaper to deliver internet and not send it to the customer than it is to deliver internet service. By that I mean that access cost is about 50% of the internet bill that goes to the customer. Internet NZ used to have a principle a while back regarding domain names, that the price of a domain name was stable and declining over time. That principle cannot apply, even though it needs to broadband pricing, because the price of access is regulated for the next 5 years. We cannot shift the access price down, and it is 50% of the cost. ISPs have no margin to move down their cost significantly, so there has to be some movement if we want to make broadband affordable. To get under that, or well under that $100 per month barrier, there has to be some movement on the access side, and there cannot be. We have a problem.
I have my glasses on. It's a sign of getting old, is having to wear glasses. Kia ora tātou, I'm Anthony Royal. I'm chair of Ngāpu Waia, which is the National Māori Broadband Working Group. And through Ngāpu Waia, I also sit on the National Advisory Group, which is a group that was put together under RBI of various interested stakeholders, together with Chorus and Vodafone and MB. The question was raised around RBI 2 and whether that should be influenced by how we have done on RBI 1. And I think there are a few things from our experience in trying to get marae in particular connected to RBI that we should probably have a look at as part of RBI 2. And here's a couple of things that I think we should look at. One is RBI fibre. We have quite a lot of, well, actually it's not a heck of a lot, but there is RBI fibre in the ground around New Zealand, which is fibre that's been paid directly for by Chorus. And you can go and have a look at this. If you go on the Chorus website, you can go and look at the map and you can find the coloured bits of RBI fibre. But try connecting to it. It's a heck of a job. Now, we have actually managed to do it in a place called Mātiti, in Mitimiti, Mātiti Marae, in Mitimiti, which is way up on the north of Hokianga. If you go to Hokianga and then you keep going north along the coast, you'll get to a place called Mitimiti, which used to have no cell phone coverage. Oh, sorry, you did have cell phone coverage. At low tide, you could walk out past the high tide mark and get cell phone coverage from Omapere. We've put in a RBI fibre into that marae, and actually tonight, 6:30, Wiggly Room, or whatever it's called, I think there'll be a presentation on that, which My Republic's been part of, Chorus, Vodafone have all been involved in putting that together. So, I'm coming to the point, Reg. RBI fibre is hard to connect to. It was very, very difficult for us to get that project underway, but thanks to Chorus. But there are other marae that we have that have RBI fibre right in front of the marae, right on the front doorstep. And it's very, very expensive to connect. And so I think that's one thing that we could fix. The second thing that we should be fixing is around the RBI towers. Now, these towers that we've built are fairly sturdy beasts. They're probably, my guess is they're probably about $500,000. A standard tower is about $250,000. I think my guess is that these are probably around $500,000 a piece. They were built so that you could put 3 mobile operators on the top and 3 fixed wireless operators on the bottom. And if you ask the question, how many fixed wireless operators are actually operating off those towers, my guess is they're in the single digits. And then if you ask the questions why, and I think I heard Chris say before that one of the challenges is that they're really expensive to go onto those towers. Now, these are ones that are substantive towers. I assume they're built in really good places that has really good sight across the country. they have power, they have fibre backhaul. Why isn't it that we've got more operators sitting on those towers, if for no other reason than they get really inexpensive backhaul? So that's a second thing I think should be fixed. And the third thing is when we look at these mobile black spots, my personal view is if we spend any money on putting in cell sites around the country, that all 3 operators are able to operate off those cell sites equitably. I don't think that any one particular operator should be allowed to capture that market. Kia ora. Those are my thoughts. Am I allowed to pass this on? Yeah.
Actually, I just had a question for you about, you said it was difficult to connect to RBI fibre. Was the reason for that cost, or were there other reasons that stopped you from actually being able to connect? From my understanding, it's actually, well, it's supposed to be a pretty straightforward process, depending on the RSP that you're dealing with.
Actually, it turns out that not all RBI fibre has been created equal. This was news to us, actually, and it took quite a while to figure out what was going on. That's because RBI, the UFB, in theory what's supposed to happen is on RBI fibre, you're supposed to be able to get a UFB-like experience. That was part of the contract. But actually, the RBI fibre, most of it is not delivered using GPON technology. Now we're starting to get technical. You know, I can just spell GPON. And so the challenge is, in those rural areas that don't have high density of homes, I'm told it is expensive because you've got to put that technology in place. And that makes one connection off that RBI fibre quite expensive because you've got to put all this connectivity in. The alternative is to run a point-to-point fibre. But if you start running point-to-point fibre, that becomes a commercial offering. So suddenly, now for Marae, the only way we can do it is if actually we pay full commercial rates as if we were hauling, you know, long kilometres, because it's got to go point-to-point right back to the point of presence. So it is actually a combination of, it's just difficult because nobody knows about it, but there are also some technical and cost reasons as to why we can't do it.
Sorry, I'm keen, you know, looking at the time and keen to move on and try and address all the questions. Just briefly trying to summarise on RBI 1. Yes, it started to make a difference. Not, I think, the difference that a lot of people were hoping it would, particularly the further out you go. There seems to be quite a lot of activity going on in rural areas that isn't particularly associated with RBI 1, and good on that. We don't really know in detail if any of what I've just said is correct, because as Claire said, it's not been evaluated, and we've not had that information made available to us. I've been Chris Bishop from INBI, who's running, I think, both the RBI 1 and the RBI 2 processes, has just asked if he could have a few words, so I'm more than happy to do that. And we'll pass over to Chris in a second. Then I want to move on a bit further down the list. One of the hopes originally, and Anthony touched on this, was that the chorus fibre going into schools might be the hub for the communities. You know, the intention was it was N4L to deliver better education in rural schools, but the hope was that the communities wider than that would benefit. So once Chris has had a quick word with us, Tim will move on to the N4L. Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks, Rich. There's a couple of points which I just wanted to touch on. Part of it's around, and this relates to the RBI 1, part of it relates to how we actually look at the RBI 1. If we look at rural infrastructure, I don't think anyone can say that there's one technology that is actually going to solve the problem. It's not just wireless, it's not just fibre, it's not just DSL, VDSL. So in terms of selecting Vodafone and Chorus, the benefit of that partnership was actually that we got the best of both worlds. We got fixed line upgrades where those were available, and sometimes you will get a far better service off VDSL than you will off a 3G site. In some places, you'll be too far away from a cabinet, so the 3G services, now 4G services which are being offered, are going to give you a far better experience. So we're not expecting, and never have expected, that wireless services are going to have the same uptake as the fixed line services. So what we're trying to do is create an environment where consumers actually pick the very best technology and the very best price that they can get. So in terms of how happy we are with uptake, we've got 25.2% uptake of those services, and that's not including any of the small wireless operators that coexist in this arrangement as well. The other thing which has been touched on today is around the pricing of those services. So our agreements with Chorus and Vodafone are at a wholesale level, so retail service providers add on their markup. At the time that we negotiated the Vodafone contract, we locked in place a price cap for the wholesale services, which were the same as what the copper services were. Now, the Commerce Commission, of course, came out last week and said $38 is the copper price. So there is about a $6 difference in terms of that wholesale price now as a result of the Commerce Commission's work. But the prices we're seeing in terms of at a retail level are far greater than $6 of difference. So I think affordability comes down to, in part, retail service providers thinking about the types of services that they provide and also offering much different retail pricing levels, because there is only a small $6 difference at the wholesale level. I guess one of the things where I think things could potentially move is in terms of the size of some of those towers. And there's always ways to reduce the costs, particularly in thinking about how big some of these towers are. And that's a consideration, I think, for RBI 2. So those are the only comments which I'd just like to make around RBI 1.
So I've got something to add on price and it could be of interest. So, sorry, Vaughan here again. Chris, if those input costs are accurate, they're exactly the same as the fibre input costs, right, or thereabouts. So the conclusion I'm reaching, and I'll have a look at this, is maybe I should try and shake up that market and retail it, test it, because I suspect my competitors are gouging.
One very short question. 20-second question. 20 seconds. Chris, the wholesale rate, is that limited in the amount of traffic you can have, or is that unlimited traffic for RBI?
Yes, so there is at a wholesale level, a data cap of, it's currently in the contract at around about 30 gigabytes, but Vodafone's starting to offer that service. I think they're up to 80 gigabytes now within that. And part of that's around ensuring that the radio resource from the wireless towers isn't just being consumed or being hogged by one or two users on that tower. So we could have had an unlimited cap, and then what we would have experienced is a massive degradation of service for all of the other users. So again, it's a limitation in the technology. If someone's got a fixed line service available, then and they want to download a lot of stuff.
I was going to say, yeah, we actually are moving more into the supply side, and this afternoon's for the supply side, so all that stuff we'll keep for that. And I did say, next up, we're just going to have a word from Tim about N4L and the fibre going into schools and how that could be used for communities involved.
Okay, so so N4L, for those of you that aren't aware of it, is the Network for Learning, which is a Crown-owned entity which is basically tasked with putting fibre and high-speed connections into all 2,500 schools in the country. So at the moment, just probably the easiest way to visualise this is, just bring this up. Sorry, working upside down. quickest way to see where this network is, and this is a publicly available site for anyone here and beyond, it's just map.n4l.co.nz. It actually, if you search for a school, it brings up where that school is and where it is on the connection. So I don't know if anyone wants to throw a school at me.
Yeah. One, Bay Area School.
Upside down. Okay, so that school is connected to N4L. If we zoom out a wee bit, you'll see that that's one represents a fibre drop there into that site. And there are ministry guidelines around how, schools can use those connections. N4L is funded for, and the fibre to that school is funded for that school and for its students. The actual physical bit of the fibre that's going in is being used, there's 2 bits being used by N4L, but there is more fibre that's available to use for communities. The ministry has released, we'll jump across to it again, a number of different sections where they discuss options for schools to consider and to think about as they, in terms of using these connections. What I would say after 7 years of leading ICT in a school is I don't believe that capacity, this conversation shouldn't be led by principals. School principals already have an awful lot on their plates in terms of what they're managing and dealing with. I think there's a unique opportunity here for iwi, for young farmers, for local councils to start to consider what could be built on top of these fibre connections that are going in all up and down the country. And I'll just leave it at that. I would like to just chuck to Clayton, who is our head engineer, and just to get him to just describe some of the technologies that are going in, particularly into the rural schools, as we're building this network out.
Good day, everyone. Clayton Hubbard, Network for Learning. So I'm one of the technical engineers, and I guess getting out the RBI phase 1, we've been in a privileged situation by having fibre prioritised 2 schools in New Zealand. I mean, we've got over 100,000 users, over 700 schools connected to the RBI phase 1 at the moment. I think the community side of things, rolling out to rural, is starting to engage. We're starting to engage with more initiatives around wireless providers, trying to get that connectivity out to schools. And we have started creating, or we've got actually our guidelines around the community wireless side of things, and schools been able to actually start using their fibre connection to be able to start empowering the community. And that's already been used actually in more of a central Auckland type of already out with Manaia Kalani Trust. So the model's there, it can be used. I think it's really about uptake now. It's about people actually really grabbing it and starting to run with it. So in my perspective, there is a positive to the RBI phase 1. We have seen education institutions really benefit from this connectivity, and I just hope that we do actually start seeing the extension beyond the boundaries and actually push it a bit further. So I don't know if anyone wants to throw any questions or...
Yeah, thanks, Clayton. John here. I was just wondering how much further can you extend that wireless reach, and is the access, filtered access to the internet, the same as the schools get? So schools have sort of protected access, yeah.
Yep, I think that's very much the services over the top. I guess the first thing is, let's extend to the greatest boundaries of what our country can do, right? So we're on an island at the end of the day, and the whole thing is all about stretching to the coast. So it's been able to pick up things like the Chatham Islands and areas like that and extend beyond that. Obviously in N4L's case, we really got an obligation around the filtered access side of things to make things safe and secure for schools. But yeah, it's really about stretching out right out to the communities as far as you can really get.
Yeah, Ivan here again. Just on the schools as a digital hub, why I gave you Tolaga Bay as an example, is we're working with that at the moment. There's 2 models from the ministry's perspective. One is the school extending their network out into the community, which is great. Also has its issues. And the other model is for a commercial operator to go into the school and co-locate with the school and then beam it out from the community. So just to clarify that, really.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point. And I mean, we've had challenges, and I think most ISPs have had challenges with Chorus being unable to actually provide multiple services over a single ONT that was actually at the school, essentially the media converter. And that proved a challenge because some of these schools only would have a single fibre run into the school. So it was additional builds that needed to go out and stuff. And we went through quite a few challenges. I believe recently Chorus have started resolving that around the RBI side of things. So that's ability to be able to, for commercial providers to be able to go into a school, ultimately strike up a deal and co-locate and extend beyond to the community. That stuff is now becoming available.
Kia ora, just a request more than a question. Can you make your contact information available, please? Because I work with several schools that happen to be in the Māori medium space and they're trying to decipher the opportunity. And so there's different amounts of information that's been passed on to them. And so if we can have your information available, if there are think tanks, roadshows, anything of that nature going around the country, that would be really useful. Kia ora.
Thank you. The TUI is going to be barking at us any second now. Thank you, everybody, first of all, before I finish and let you get to your lunch, for participating. As I said earlier, we've got another session this afternoon. I'm keen that the supply side have their say. We've given a little bit of the supply side a few words this morning, so don't feel that if you're a user, that's it. We'll try and give you more opportunity this afternoon. I think the last comment actually sort of summarises the problem that I envisage here, that it's as much a communication problem as a communication problem, that people who need broadband in rural areas don't seem to be able to communicate with the people who are supplying that broadband. There seem to be a whole bunch of intermediaries, N4L, the government, local government, in the middle there, and are they a block? I don't know, but it's a question, and you're first up this afternoon. If you've got the answer to that question, because I think the suppliers are saying the same. You know, Kurt yesterday said, you know, they've rolled out a lot of fibre to cabinets in rural areas, but there's no uptake. Why is there no uptake? And I don't know. Sorry, there's not much more time for questions. Very quickly.
Just Sasha from MB. In regards to the marketing communication issues that you've talked about, my role is to try and address some of that, specifically around making it more consumer friendly for people to understand across RBI and actually ultra-fast broadband as well. Again, you've said there's a number of different parties involved, over 100 companies and organisations involved. So what I've done is start to look at this and how we address it. So I'm interested to hear any thoughts, and you can provide them via the hashtag, I think, through the stream of ideas around addressing some of those consumer information, but I can foresee a need for a very plain English consumer portal of information for anyone to access regardless of their usage and regardless of their technical abilities and understanding. So if you've got any ideas, I'd love to hear them. Either come and see me or through the stream.
Okay, great. And to be continued after lunch. And you're first up.